I'm David Smoke, and we are joined by former Baylor linebacker Eddie Lackey, who's turned out to be one hell of an entrepreneur and a businessman, too. He joins us on 365 Sports. Eddie, great to have you on the show. Now, did you have conversations with Dave Aranda, gotten to know him pretty well? Did you speak at all to this year's team?
Yes, I did. And yes, thank you so much for having me on the show again. It's been a couple of years, so I was excited when you reached out. And I did talk to Coach Aranda and the team. You know, it was the Iowa State week and homecoming, and he had reached out and, he wanted me to come talk about really kind of my story a little bit and relate it in some fashion to just the advantage of playing at home as well. Because, we haven't played too good at home this season. So he wanted just, a former player to come in and come talk. I think he had a couple other guys come and talk that same week. So I went and spoke to the team on Friday night when they were at the hotel and right before they ate dinner. So, yeah, I was super honored and thankful I got to go in there and talk to them.
Eddie, what in your opinion has been where this team veered off the path?
I think that's a really tough question. There's so much to. Winning is tough, and I think that sometimes you take it for granted, and there's so much that has to go right to win a game. And I think that when I'm looking at like the defenses, like I've been on losing teams, unfortunately, before. I've been on our 2012 team. Actually, was a losing team going into. I want to say it was like game 8 or 9. We had a 4-game losing streak. We were 4-5. So yeah, we were 9 games into the year and having a losing year, but we knew that things were just a couple things off. Like we were not getting to our gaps. We were, missed assignments and missed opportunities, pick sixes that were dropped interceptions, and it's just I think that a lot has to come together for it to turn. And for us, that year that I was on a team, at least at Baylor, that's what I actually spoke about with the team when I talked to them a couple Fridays ago, and just I know that the work ethic is there. I know that the coaches are coaching their tails off, and I just think that there's a lot that has to come together for a win to happen, and that's every single week. And so us going into that Kansas State game in 2012 when they were number 1 and Colin Klein is the Heisman favorite that year and on the cover of Sports Illustrated and the game is hyped up, we knew that things were close, and we just had to dig a little bit deeper than what we were already playing at. We were playing at a high level, but we were getting beat by teams that we shouldn't have been getting beat by, and so it may not be apples to apples and all that, but I just think that when we won that game, it changed the trajectory of our program. It went from that 4-game losing streak, losing to Texas and Oklahoma and Iowa State and TCU, and we lost a couple other games, and we went on a 13-game, I think it was 13-game winning streak at that point, and we won the Holiday Bowl and beat up on UCLA and then won 2 Big 12 championships back to back. So I know that there's a lot that needs to happen here, and I don't think I'm the one that has to tell the answers and say this is what needs to happen and that's what needs to happen. But I just think that when I talked to those guys, I could tell they were focused. I could tell that they weren't fooling around in there. Their eyes were on the game, and they had their play sheets in there. They were preparing just like any championship team would be. So I just think that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that they're not getting enough credit for. But again, I just think there's so much that goes into winning just even one football game. And the Big 12 is a crazy conference.
Eddie, it's not a reason that people will probably love to hear that are Baylor fans, but it's valid. This is also a young team in spots. It's not an overall just super young team, but there are a lot of young guys playing, and that's where some of the bright spots actually are. How do you kind of balance that of like, hey, it's young guys and they're kind of working their way through, but also like, hey, we're 9 games into this thing. Like, hey, if you've been around for a couple of years, we need you to start pulling your weight. I mean, what's kind of that delicate balance of understanding there's youth, but also that the youth needs to also understand that they need to grow up pretty quickly in some cases?
Yeah. Well, I just think that's so much on the leadership of the older guys on the team, the juniors, the seniors. I think that is where, for me, when I got to Baylor, I was already a junior, but I was still adjusting to the game of how fast Division I football is and how crazy Big 12 football is in general, spreading you out. And I think that it really comes down to those juniors and seniors speaking into those younger guys and keeping them in line and making sure that they're doing their film study when we're not meeting as a team and they're not fooling around. I think that there's a lot of things that they need to keep the younger guys accountable to. And even if it's not a starter, I think that can come from a guy that, hey, he's been around the program or he's been at that level for long enough. I think that it's imperative to have those junior and senior leaders on the team leading the way for the younger guys. And so those younger guys also have to be receptive to that too. So there's definitely a balance, and it's hard to balance that. It's tough because I'd like to think I had a pretty tough coach. If I couldn't handle the coaching that he was giving me, I think that there was a couple guys that transferred out just because of how tough. And he's not shy to say that he's a tough coach, but Coach Phil Bennett.
Yep.
And, I think that some guys need that. I needed that personally. I needed the ripping. I needed Coach Bennett to get on me and Coach Gooch to get on me. And enough so that I was in tears a lot of times. I'm not afraid to say that. I was in tears after practice, just so frustrated just with everything. And I think that it takes that to push through to those levels, that those championship level habits and those things that you're striving for as an athlete and as a football team.
Eddie, we have Phil Bennett on every Monday. We've done this really since, I think, around COVID. He comes on with us on Mondays, and it is the great segment. And he's brought you up and Taylor Young up and whatever else up. And it's when you watch Baylor play, and he said this to us Monday night, Coach Bennett, he doesn't see many dynamic players. He doesn't see alphas. And I'm not asking you to be an X's and O's coach or whatever, but it does seem to be an empty cupboard when it comes to dudes that make plays.
Yeah. Well, I think, and coming from a guy like Coach Bennett, he was looking for guys that were playmakers. And they might not be the fastest guys or the tallest guys or, the guys that you look at on paper and say, man, that guy is what we want. I think there's some of it isn't coachable. And yeah, I think that there has to be that with when you're trying to win games. I think that you have to have those guys that are making those differences and causing the fumbles and, creating turnovers. And turnovers are just so big in a game. It's a momentum shifter. Obviously, if you're turning the ball over and putting up 6 points with that, it's huge. And I think that, it's hard to say, but I do think that we're missing some of that talent that's, that can create some of those turnovers and those big time kind of plays.
Eddie, for a defense, when you can't stop the run consistently, especially, how demoralizing is that?
Yeah, it's brutal. I think, I think that's tough on the morale because the pride in you as a manly football player, even, I think you don't want to get blown off the ball. You don't want to get beat at the line of scrimmage. It's also just the mentality of a defensive guy. I think that you're a dog. Like you don't want that to be happening. So it's tough. And when you're not winning games and that's happening, gosh, I can't tell you how tough that is just mentally, let alone physically. And I think that you have to find every small little bit of a edge that you can get on your opponent. And I think that's where I was able to dig into just the smallest of things on film study. And I've got to think that those guys are digging into those things. But, I was obsessive over, figuring out just the small tendencies of the right guard for TCU. And, which if his foot was 2 inches further back, then that means he's going to pull. Or, those little things give you that little bit of an edge to win the line of scrimmage.
Eddie, when you were speaking with the players and the team, were they paying attention to you? Can you tell?
Yeah, I would say they were. They were very attentive. They were looking up, and I have no reason to believe that they weren't paying attention to me. I think I wish, I could sit here and say, hey, man, it made a big impact, and we got the W the next day. But no, I do think I even had one of the guys come up and come talk to me, and he actually played for Coach Bennett at North Texas, and so we connected on that. Jake Roberts, the tight end, and so it was nice just to talk to him. But I think that just from what I could tell, I know to look around the room as I'm talking and not just hone in on one person or look down at the ground. So I feel like everybody was listening.
All right. Tell everybody what you're doing. You've become quite the businessman. Obviously, you're in incredible shape. How can people find out what you're doing right now? Yeah.
So I'm living in Abilene, Texas. My wife and I are out here, and I'm actually I'm partnered with her parents with a franchise called Massage Heights here. So that's our business out here, and then we do a little bit of some real estate stuff, and my wife is a speech therapist out here. But I've ever since I got done with my playing days, I've had to think of different ways to compete, and one of those is obviously business. And I just love. I love having a team. I love having, people to build upon, and I like to, create an encouraging atmosphere and all those kind of things, and everything that came with growing up as a football player, as an athlete, and playing team sports, I can apply to the business world too. But ever since my playing days, I wanted to do a challenge like pretty much once every other year. And I've done a marathon. I did a bodybuilding show. This year, actually, I started doing jiu-jitsu, and I'm training to do a competition in February. Now, granted, week 2 of training, I cracked my rib. So here I am. I'm getting old, I guess, and my rib has to heal up before I can continue my training for that. But I'm trying to just challenge myself differently every year, every other year, and get out of my comfort zone and do something a little different.
Well, when people kick you, that can happen.
Yeah, that's you're supposed to block. You're supposed to block that, Eddie. You're not supposed to.
It was week 10 he got to. It was week 2. Yeah. He hadn't gotten to it yet.
Yep, exactly. I got to hone in on those small details. I got to get to the film study.
Last thing for you. Thanks for your time, Eddie. Great to hear from you, and the fact you shared the story about speaking with the team. You brought up Phil Bennett. There are 1,000, I'm sure, Phil Bennett stories for you. From the time he re-recruited and took you away from Dave Aranda in Hawaii. But do you have one that you can share with us that he might not know that we now know?
Well, a funny story. I when I was still committed to Coach Aranda at Hawaii, I was committed my whole junior college season to him. And got down to the end, and I got a few offers. Tech was in there, and Iowa State, a couple other teams, and so I get on the phone, and Coach Bennett and Coach Gush are both kind of on a conference call with me and saying, "Well, on your recruiting profile, and your coaches are telling me that you're 220, 6'2". Is that right? Are you going to show up here and be 5'10"? I can't be having that. You can imagine there was some curse words thrown in there. And I'm like, no, that's correct. That's correct. So I had to go to the store. I actually had my mom help me out a little bit and go get me some Air Force One. And, they're pretty thick in the sole. So they make you look a little bit taller. I had long hair at the time and a big old thick flannel because I knew I had to look as tall as I could when I was coming on my recruiting visit. And I'll never forget the look on Coach Bennett's face. You know, it was kind of like, what the heck did the Cats just drag in here? Whenever I walked up, I could just tell I was just this Cali boy, still wearing earrings in my ears. I had long hair, you know, kind of your typical California guy. And, you know, needless to say, it ended up working out. And Coach Gush actually had me stand up in his office on the last day and said, go back to back with me. You know, just stand up. He said, take your shoes off. And he's like, you're not even taller than me. I'm barely 5'11". And so they rode me pretty hard for years and had some names for me, you know, throughout the 2 years I was playing at Baylor. So
I was surprised.
I'm
surprised you mentioned there were some curse words involved with Coach Bennett.
Are you surprised?
Yeah. No, I'm not. No,
Yeah.
not at all.
No, I know.
Eddie, congratulations on what you've done as a businessman, an entrepreneur, and also, man, they could talk about your height, whatever. You were a great linebacker at Baylor and one of the best, and we appreciate your time and sharing the stories with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Eddie
I appreciate
Lackey.
you guys.
Absolutely. You too, former Baylor linebacker who spoke with the team earlier